The letter I never expected. I was sitting on my back porch when it arrived. A warm spring wind rustled the curtains, and the ice in my sweet tea clinked lazily against the glass. The birds were just starting to return to Georgia, their chatter filling the trees like old friends swapping gossip. The envelope stood out in the day's mail, cream-colored, hand-addressed, and bearing a Missouri postmark. I hadn't seen that name in decades. My fingers trembled as I turned it over. To Mr. Raymond Eli Walker, 438 Willow Bend Drive, Savannah, Georgia. No return address. I didn't open it right away. I sat there, staring at it like it might burn a hole in my palm. I knew who it was from, even if I didn't want to admit it. After 50 years, my past had finally caught up with me. I left home when I was 18. Not for college, not for war, though both were common back in '72. I left because I slammed the door so hard it cracked the frame, and I swore I'd never walk through it again. My father, Thomas Walker, was a hard man, not cruel, but firm, cold, and unyielding. He was the kind of man who thought saying, "I love you," was a weakness. He measured success in acres of farmland and long days worked, not in soft moments or words. We had our last argument in the barn, beneath the rusting hayloft ladder and the dust motes dancing in sunlight. It started over something small, always did. I had told him I wasn't going to take over the farm. I had dreams of traveling, of playing guitar in Nashville bars, maybe even writing songs for a living. That dream was the final nail. He said things I can't forget. I said worse. And then I was gone. The letter sat unopened on the kitchen table for 2 days. I walked around it. Like a sleeping dog I didn't want to wake. My wife, Lila, passed 3 years ago. If she were still here, she'd have made me open the moment I brought it in. She always said I had a bad habit of running from things I should face. She wasn't wrong. But on the third morning, I poured myself some coffee, sat down with that worn envelope, and sliced it open with the edge of my pocket knife. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. Dear Raymond, if this letter reaches you, I hope you'll forgive the old man writing it. I don't have much time left, and I find myself wishing I'd done things differently. There's so much I never said. I'd like to try if you'll let me. I'm at Millstone Hospital in Springfield. They say my heart's giving out. If you can come home. Dad, I read it 3 times. Then I sat there for an hour, the room too quiet, the clock ticking like thunder. For 50 years, we hadn't spoken. Not a card, not a call. I didn't go back for funerals, not even Mom's. And now this. Come home. The road from Savannah to Springfield is nearly 800 miles long. I drove it in silence, save for old Johnny Cash tapes and the occasional roadside diner, where waitresses call me Han. I passed through towns that looked exactly like the one I grew up in, places where the gas stations doubled as grocery stores, and everyone still waved at strangers. With every mile, memories came flooding back. The gravel driveway where I skinned my knees. The silo where I kissed Judy Barnes after homecoming. My mom's voice calling us in at sunset. And of course, the barn. Millstone Hospital was small, clean, quiet. The nurse at the desk looked over her glasses at me and said, "Room 207. He's been asking." I didn't know what I expected when I walked in. I'd built my father into some kind of shadow, part ghost, part myth. But there he was, older, grayer, thinner. His once powerful hands looked frail against the white sheets. But those eyes, pale blue, piercing, were still his. He looked up and smiled, just barely. "Ray." It was all he said. And somehow, it was enough to break something loose in me. He didn't talk much that first day. Just held my hand for a while and closed his eyes. I sat by his bedside and watched the machines beep and hum, and I wondered how many years we had wasted in silence. That night, I stayed in an old motel down the street. Cheap floral curtains, a lumpy mattress, and a vending machine outside that ate my quarters. But I didn't sleep. I thought about Lila, about my mother, about the little boy I used to be. The next morning, I went back, and I kept going back every day until something unexpected happened. He started talking. The hospital became a strange rhythm. Mornings with black coffee and gas station pastries. Afternoons by Dad's bedside. Evenings walking the old fields behind the town motel. I hadn't planned to stay more than a day, maybe two, just long enough to say whatever needed saying and leave. But life has a way of shifting under you, quietly, like sand under a rising tide. Dad started to talk. Not a lot at first. Mostly about the farm. The new hands he'd hired before retiring. The storm of '89 that split the sycamore near the east pasture. How the tractor engine never sounded the same after he rebuilt it himself. But one morning, after I brought him a fried egg sandwich he couldn't finish, he asked, "Did you ever go back to barn?" I paused, mid-sip of coffee. "No, not since that night." He nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the window. That barn remembers us better than we remember ourselves. I drove out there that afternoon. The farmhouse looked smaller, not just from age, but from time. The shutters hung crooked. Paint faded to a dull whisper the pale green the first remembered. But the barn stood proud, weathered and creaking, but whole, like it had been waiting. I pushed open the doors. Dust billowed up in shafts of light. The smell hit me hard. Hay, old leather, rust, and something else. Memory. There were still horseshoes hanging on the wall. The workbench was covered in cobwebs, but I could see my initials carved into beam behind it. REW 1968. In the corner, the loft ladder stood like a stairway to ghosts. I climbed it without thinking. Each rung creaked just the same. At the top, I sat down on a bale of hay, let the silence wrap around me, and let myself remember. I remembered the last words I said in this place. How I shouted about wanting more than milking cows and fixing fences. How I told him he didn't know me. And how he didn't stop me when I grabbed my guitar case and walked into the night. I always thought he wanted me gone, but maybe I was wrong. That night in the motel, I pulled out the only photo I had left from before I left. It was torn along one edge, faded and bent, but there we were. Mom, in her Sunday dress. Dad, taller than I remembered, hand on my shoulder. Me, about 14, grinning like I had a secret. And behind us, the barn. The next day, Dad was sitting up. I went back to the barn, I said as I walked in. He looked over, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw tears in his eyes. Did it still smell like oil and straw? He asked. Yeah, I smiled. Exactly. He laughed, a real one. First I'd heard since I came back. You were always meant for more than that farm, he whispered after a pause. I just didn't know how to say it without sounding like I was letting you down. I sat down beside him. You weren't, I said. I just needed you to try. The days that followed were filled with more talking than we'd ever done in my whole childhood. He told me about the war, about meeting Mom in a feed store in 1950, about the time he dropped a transmission on his foot and swore for a week straight. He asked about Lila. I told him everything. How she hated mushrooms but loved growing them. How she always read the last page of a book first. How she left a note under my pillow every anniversary. Even the last one, the one she knew she wouldn't make. He cried for her like he'd known her. I cried too. One morning, he asked me to bring him something from the farmhouse. Top drawer of my desk. Small leather box. You'll know it. So I drove out, found the old roll top, still tucked under the window in the back room. Inside was a box, just as he said. Worn brown leather, edges cracked. I opened it carefully. Inside were photos. Old ones. Me as a baby. Me on a pony. Me in a little cowboy hat. A report card with a gold star. A guitar pick. And a faded note in my mother's handwriting. Tom, he's at your stubbornness, but my dreams let him go far. I stared at it until the words blurred. When I brought it back, I didn't say anything, just placed the box in his lap. He opened it slowly, like it weighed 100 pounds. When he found the note, his hands shook. I should have shown you this before, he whispered. I should have done a lot of things. I nodded, but this time I wasn't angry. This time, I just reached out and held his hand. And we sat like that, while the afternoon sun painted the room gold. The final week of Dad's life unfolded like the last chapter of an old novel. Not rushed, not dramatic, but quiet and deliberate. Each day was a sentence, each memory a paragraph, and we, two stubborn men shaped by pride and distance, finally wrote an ending we could live with. He told me he wanted to go home, not to stay, just to see the place one more time. The house, the barn, the sycamore tree by the south fence. So we arranged it. The doctors were hesitant, but they saw the look in his eyes. I rented a medical van. The nurse, a kind woman named Annie, volunteered to ride along. When we pulled into Gravel Drive, I saw his fingers tighten slightly on the blanket over his lap. "This is it," I said gently. His eyes scanned the land like it was an old friend. He nodded, whispering, "God, it's smaller than I remember." We wheeled him to the porch. He asked to sit in the rocking chair, the same one that creaked under his weight when I was 6, and he used to read me Mark Twain under the porch light. I helped him settle in, and we watched the wind stir the wheatgrass at the edge of the fields. "I used to think this land would outlive me," he said. "I was wrong. You'll outlive it." I looked at him. "That was never the plan, Dad." He chuckled. "The plan was never the point." He held my gaze for a long moment. "You were always enough, even when I didn't show it, even when I let my silence become a wall. You were never the disappointment I feared you'd be. You were the man I didn't know how to raise." He asked to go into the barn. It took some maneuvering, but we got him there. The nurse stayed back as I wheeled him in. Dust danced again in the sunlight. That smell of hay and time wrapped around us. We stopped near the old feed crates. "I used to think if I just worked hard enough, you'd understand," he said. "But understanding doesn't grow in silence. It needs words." I should have said more. I should have been more. I kneeled beside him. "You were my father." That was already more than I knew how to forgive. But I do now. His eyes brimmed, and for once he didn't fight it. "You were the best thing I ever helped create," he said. And I, grown man, gray at the temples, pain and love tangled in my chest. I cried. 3 days later, he passed. Peacefully, quietly, with his hand in mine, and a photograph of my mother on his chest. We buried him near the tree line, where the morning sun hits first, just like he always liked. I gave a eulogy, talked about the barn, the silence, the long road back from anger. I spoke about the gift of reconciliation, the rarest of second chances. And when it was over, the town, the same town I once ran from, gathered around me like I'd never left. Because maybe I never had. The farm was sold. The proceeds went to the local youth music program, just like Dad asked. "Maybe one more kid like you will make it out," he said. But I kept the barn. I didn't fix it up, didn't restore it. I let it stand, weathered, honest, a monument to all the things that take a lifetime to learn and a single moment to forgive. Now, sometimes I sit in the loft, guitar in my lap, coffee in a thermos, and I play, not songs of sorrow, not songs of regret, songs of remembering, because this barn, it still remembers us. And some memories are worth playing on repeat. If this story stirred something in your heart, leave a comment and share your own memories. We read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow we'll share another golden moment that just might remind you of your own. Until then, take care of each other and take time to remember